What's good everybody, this is CP and welcome back to my NBA Fantasy series. Today let's talk about centers with potential to break out or be a decent fantasy sleeper to pick up for the 2019-2020 NBA season. Drafting these players might give you the extra edge you need to win it all this year. So let's not waste any more time and 走起吧. Mitch Robinson of the New York Knicks is one of the most obvious places to start. He's a popular breakout candidate this year for many reasons. As a rookie, he averaged around 7 points, 6.5 rebounds, 2.4 blocks, and around 0.8 steals per game. On paper, those stats don't look amazing, but the most impressive thing was that he only started in 19 games and averaged around 20 minutes a night. Despite limited playing time, Robinson still managed to finish second in the NBA in average blocks per game, and fourth in the league in total blocks. After a slow start, Robinson really picked things up late in the season. He averaged around 10 points, 9.5 boards, 2.8 blocks, and 0.9 steals in the final 2 months, and was actually a top 15 fantasy player during that time. Heading into 2019-2020, Robinson is expected to become the Knicks starting center. I expect him to see closer to 30 minutes a night, which gives him a good chance to average a double-double and possibly over 3 blocks per game. On top of that, I can see him challenge Miles Turner and Rudy Gobert as the league's top shot blocker next year. The only downside to Robinson's fantasy game is his inability to stay out of foul trouble. If he can't fix that part of his game, it might restrict him from reaching his full potential next year. Depending on your league, some owners may reach for Robinson very early. Personally, I think taking him with a second round pick might be a bit risky. But if you play in a long-term keeper or dynasty league and are looking for a young center to build around, it might be worth the risk. Out of everyone on this list, I think Robinson has the best potential to finish as a top 30 fantasy player by the end of next season. Ivica Zubac of the LA Clippers is another player you might want to add on your watch list, especially if you are looking for a young center with the potential to average a double-double along with good shooting percentages. After getting traded to the Clippers last year, Zubac started in 25 games and put up a very decent stat line. He averaged 9.4 points, 7.7 boards, 0.9 blocks, and put up very respectable shooting numbers for a center. The Clippers don't have too many options at the center position this year, so Zubac should see decent playing time. I don't expect Zubac to finish the fantasy season with elite numbers, but he seems like a guy who can put up 12 points, 10.5 rebounds, 1 block, and won't hurt you at the line as well. If all goes well, I think Zubac should finish the season as a top 100 fantasy player, and I wouldn't be surprised if he breaches the top 75. Wendell Carter Jr. is another promising young center I expect to set new career highs this year. He only played 44 games in his rookie year, but still averaged a respectable 10 and 7 stat line along with 1.3 blocks per game. His shooting wasn't great for a big man at 48%, but I think his ability to provide decent value across multiple categories can make up for it. At 20 years old, he is already the Bulls' starting center, and it looks like Cristiano Felicio is the only one that is a threat to his minutes. So I expect Carter Jr. to average around 28 to 30 minutes this year. Being so young, I think we can see his overall game significantly improve for the next 2 to 4 years. Once he hits his prime, I could see him putting up Al Horford-like numbers and being able to contribute above average numbers in 5 or more fantasy categories. So seeing him average a 14 and 10 stat line along with 1.5 blocks and 0.9 steals wouldn't surprise me at all. If you play in a long-term keeper or dynasty league, this might be a good year to buy in low on Carter Jr. before he blows up in the near future. Thomas Bryant of the Washington Wizards is another young center with blow-up potential this year. His minutes fluctuated last season and only averaged around 20 minutes per game. Despite his unsteady playing time, he still finished off the year around 10.5 points, 6.3 boards, and close to 1 block per game. Bryant really picked things up in the second half of the season. We saw him average around 12 points, 7.4 rebounds, and over 1 block per game in the final 2 months, and finished the season as a top 100 fantasy player. He is currently projected to be the Wizards' starting center, and should be able to hold off Bertans and Mahimi for starting minutes. And if you look at the Wizards roster, aside from Bradley Beal, they don't have too many scoring options. so there's a chance that Bryant will be one of their primary options down low, and this should increase his scoring numbers next year. If I had to guess, I would say Bryant is capable of averaging close to 14 points and 9 rebounds in 2020. His steals and block count could be better, but his decent shooting percentage for a center should offer you better value than a lot of fantasy big men out there. At only 22, Bryant might be an up-and-coming dynasty center for your keeper leagues you might want to target, and this season might be a good time to buy in on him before his fantasy value significantly increases for the next 2 to 4 years. Derek Favors is another player who can bring decent value, and can be one of the sneaker pickups this year. His fantasy value took a huge hit over the past few years, and a big reason for that was he shared the paint with arguably one of the most dominant centers in the NBA in Rudy Gobert. In the process, Favors saw a lot of time at the 4, but still managed to stick in the starting rotation, and averaged 11.8 points, 7.4 boards, and around 1.4 blocks per game last year. But his offseason move to the New Orleans Pelicans should revive his fantasy game a bit this season. Heading into 2019-2020, he is projected to be the Pelicans starting center. This gives him a good chance to increase his boards, blocks, and easy buckets around the basket. I don't think the Pelicans will play him 35 minutes a night, but I still expect Favors to average around 25 to 28 minutes next year. One thing I like most about Favors' fantasy game is his consistency. In his last 6 seasons with the Utah Jazz, he consistently averaged over 13 points, 7.5 boards, 1.3 blocks, and around 0.9 steals per game. At 28, Favors is the oldest player on this list, but fantasy-wise, I expect him to perform at a high level for at least 1 to 2 more seasons. Overall, Favors may not be the flashiest name at the center position, but he can certainly get the job done. If he is able to bounce back this season, he will be a very solid pickup that can give you extra insurance at the center position. If your team is a contending team in a dynasty or keeper league, Favors might be an affordable target to acquire to beef up your roster at the trade deadline. Jakob Poeltl of the San Antonio Spurs might be another sneaky sleeper to go after, especially if you need a center late in the draft. He was somewhat of a disappointment last year. We saw his scoring numbers regress as he failed to make a huge fantasy impact for the Spurs. But at 23 and being penciled in as San Antonio's starting center, I still like Poeltl's upside. Not only do I think he can bounce back, I think he still has breakout potential. Simply put, the Spurs are pretty thin at the center position, and may look to go younger as the season goes on. When Pau Gasol got injured and bought out last year, Poeltl showed a glimpse of what he can do. From March to April, he averaged around 6.6 boards and close to 1.5 blocks and 1 steal per game, with only 20 minutes of playing time. If Poeltl's playing time can get closer to the high 20s this year, there's a chance that he can be a borderline 10-10 guy with over 2 blocks per game. I'm not sure if I would draft him anytime earlier than the 6th or 7th round, but if he's available later, I wouldn't mind spending a late pick on him. Bam Adebayo of the Miami Heat is another center who could potentially have a huge breakout season. He only started in 28 games last year and averaged around 23 minutes a night, but we saw a modest increase from his rookie numbers. Bam's stats improved in pretty much every major fantasy category. With Hassan Whiteside gone, it looks like Adebayo will officially be the Heat's new starting big man this year, with a great opportunity to shatter his career numbers once again. If everything pans out, I could see him averaging around 13 points, 11 boards, along with 1.3 blocks per game. On top of that, he could probably give you around 3 assists and over 1 steal per game. I'm not sure if Adebayo can finish this year as a top 5 fantasy center, but I think he has a chance to breach the top 10 and be one of the most improved fantasy players in 2020. So if you play in a long-term dynasty or keeper league and is looking for a center to build around, Bam Adebayo might be a very solid choice, as I think he has potential to significantly improve for the next 2 to 4 years, and even become a top 50 or top 40 fantasy player for much of his prime.
What's good, everybody? This is CT, and I have some very exciting news to announce today. So basically, for this fantasy season, I've decided to step things up a bit and will be hosting my very own competitive 12-team head-to-head money league, where I'll be competing with 11 of my subscribers for cash prizes. I plan to reward the top 3 finishers with cash prizes. On top of that, the first place winner will be receiving a very special gift delivered from me. To find out how you can qualify for this league and win some money, check out the link below. Don't wait, cause once the spots fill up, I'll be locking up the league until the season starts. I hope to see some of you there and I can't wait for the season to start. 走起吧!